Shabbos Daf Daled. Rabbi Bar Abaya has an amazing question. A person takes a piece of dough, and in order to bake the dough, he puts it in the side of the oven, like they bake today lafas. Now it takes a few minutes for the dough to bake. Once it bakes, then and only then will he be chayav isidor of baking. Is he permitted to remove the dough in order not to be over isidor, but by removing the dough, he's over a isidor abanon called ridia. And the question is, in order to prevent him from being chayav a karban chatos, can we allow him to be over isidor abanon? Now a karban chatos comes only for a shaygig, and a shaygig is only if a person is unaware of what he's doing from beginning of his act until the end of the act. So how is it possible that he had an awareness and he came to and he understands that he's doing the isser and therefore he wants to remove the dough? It has to be that we're not talking about him, we're talking about his friend. His friend wants to save him from a chatos. But that's also very problematic, because in oimrim la'adam chatei kedei shiska chavercha, we don't tell a friend, you perform a minor avera in order so that your friend is not over a major avera of a chatos. Therefore, the Gemara explains, we must be talking about that we don't want this person to be over a isser mezid, that he did it on purpose. The only issue is that Rabbi Bar Abaya, in his question, he uses the language of a chatos, which means shaygig. So we have to amend that and say he didn't mean chatos, he meant mezid. In fact, there's a brisa that says mefurish, so that a person is allowed to be over the isser of ridia, of removing the dough from the oven, which is isser rabbanon, in order not to be over the isser deraisa of skila. The Gemara brings the Mishnah, which says that if a person is standing in the Rishus Harabim, and he extends his hand, he takes an object, he does an akira in Rishus Harabim, and places it in another person's hand in Rishus Hayachid. Hanacha in Rishus Hayachid. He's chayiv deraisa haitza, because he did an akira and hanacha. The question that Gemara addresses right now is, why is the hand of the person standing in Rishus Hayachid enough for the ani to be chayiv? A hand is not 4 tfachim. And in order for a person to be chayav hanacha, he has to place an object on an area that's larger than 4 by 4 tfachim. The Gemara makes 7 attempts to explain this, and the Gemara l'maskana, the last pshat, the 7th pshat is, and that's what we go with, is Rabba who explains that a hand of a person is considered 4 tfachim. You're right, it's not physically 4, but it says if it's 4 tfachim, it's chashav like 4. But before we get to that answer, let's go through the different answers. Answer number 1 is that it goes according to Rebbe Kiva, who holds that you don't need 4 tfachim, because Rebbe Kiva holds in a case where a person throws an object from a Rishus Hayachid, a private domain, to another private domain, but it travels over a public domain. It says Rebbe Kiva is chayev for haitzah, because it's as if it landed in the public domain. How could it land in the public domain? It traveled right over. The answer is because he holds of a concept called kluta kemi shun chadamya. We consider it as if it landed in the Rishus Harabim. In slow motion, as it's passing over Rishus Harabim, it landed for a millisecond in Rishus Harabim, and then it continued traveling to Rishus Hayachid. And therefore he's chayiv. The Gemara pushes that logic off and says that you see from Rebbe Kiva that he only holds kluta kamishun chadamya when it comes to landing, but not taking off. Because if he would be chayiv for taking off also, Rebbe Kiva should say he should be chayiv twice. Once for taking off in Rishus Hayachid and landing in Rishus Harabim, and then again, it must take off from Rishus Harabim in order to continue to Rishus Hayachid and be chayiv again. You see, the Rebbe Kiva holds that for landing, you don't need 4 tfachim. But for taking off, you do need 4 tfachim. Therefore, Rebbe Kiva does not fit into our Mishnah. As the Gemara is describing this concept of Rebbe Kiva, the Gemara brings Rabbah, who in the beginning had a suffix what the machlekes was, and at the end says this svara. But just to point out, the Rabbah brings something called a question. Do we learn zrika from Moshit? In other words, in the midbar, the Levim would pass beams from one wagon to another wagon, which is one Rishus Hayachid to another Rishus Hayachid, because these wagons had walls that were 10 tfachim high, and the wagons were larger than 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim. But as they were passing the beams from one wagon to the other, they were going across a Rishus Harabim. In between them was a Rishus Harabim. So therefore, it's usher to pass an object from one Rishus Hayachid to another Rishus Hayachid if you're going above a Rishus Harabim. And the question is, do we learn throwing from passing? And Rabbah went through that question, but at the end he decided, the Rebbe Kiva holds, Kluta Kamishon Chadamya. Below 10 Tfachim, you say Kluta Kamishon Chadamya. The Gemara makes another attempt. Perhaps it goes according to the Shita, our Mishnah, that says that by placing an object in somebody's hand, that's considered 4 Tfachim. Why? Because it goes like Rebbe. Rebbe holds that if you throw an object in Rosh Hashanah and it lands on a branch, even if the branch is very small, you're chayiv. The Gemara says, well, don't prove anything from that case, because the branch is actually 4 Tfachim. Why? Even though you're looking at it and it's less than 4 Tfachim, because the trunk of the tree is more than 4 Tfachim, and the branch is attached to the trunk, so it's as if the branch is 4 Tfachim wide. So perhaps there's another Rebbe. Rebbe says in a case where a person throws an object from one Rosh Hashanah to another Rosh Hashanah, like you see in the picture, from one highway to another highway, traveling over a private domain. Rebbe holds of the concept Kluta Kamishoncha, as it's traveling over the private domain, it landed in the private domain halachically. But he adds another shot. He says you are in fact chayiv twice. It travels from Rosh Hashanah and passes over Rosh Hashanah, so it's as if it landed in Rosh Hashanah. And then there's halachic, as if it took off again from Rosh Hashanah and landed again in Rosh Hashanah. So what happened was you had a hachnasa from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah, then you had a haitzah from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah, and therefore you're chayiv twice. And the Gemara pushes this attempt as well and says, only in that case does Rebbe say you're chayiv, because in the Rosh Hashanah we're talking about a Rosh Hashanah that has a ceiling. And if you have a ceiling, it's as if the whole Rosh Hashanah was full to the top. And therefore it landed somewhere, anywhere it lands, it has 4 Tfachim to land. But you can't say the same logic in Rosh Hashanah, because Rosh Hashanah cannot have a ceiling. Because in the desert, they didn't have a ceiling when they were doing the Mishkan. So too, every Rosh Hashanah cannot have a ceiling. And therefore, it doesn't fit into our Mishnah. And for the rest of the attempts of how to explain a person's hand that doesn't have 4 Tfachim, how does it work? That we'll see Be'ez Hashem on Daf Hey. Have a wonderful day.